Hi, my name is Hanna and I am the Marketing Communications Officer for Time to Change Wales. And I'm also one of the project leads for Time to Talk Day that's happening this Thursday in Wales and across the country. So Time to Talk Day is a national annual event that is partnered with, well, it's a 4-nation campaign really, which is partnered by CME and the Scottish Association for Mental Health, Inspire and Change Your Mind in Northern Ireland, and obviously Rethink and Mind in England, and obviously Time to Change Wales, which is also run by Adferiad Recovery and Mind Cymru. So that's a little bit of a quick whistle-stop tour on Time to Talk Day and Time to Change Wales. I'll pass it over to my colleague as well, Lowri, who'll talk a little bit about her role. And
thank you. Hi, my name is Lowri Jones, and I'm the programme manager for Time to Change Wales. So Time to Change Wales is a campaign that's been running for well over a decade now, and trying to encourage those conversations, those potentially difficult conversations about mental health, in the hope that we can eliminates that stigma that is so closely associated with talking about it. We work across communities, workplaces, to try and work with individuals with lived experience. So we have a whole host of champions, some amazing champions who work tirelessly day in, day out, sharing their experiences of their mental health journeys, to try and help that kind of shift in attitudes. And that's a really powerful way of hearing somebody's experience and developing that empathy and that compassion towards somebody and putting yourself in their shoes, I guess, because we know that mental health can impact anybody at any point. Nobody is immune to it. Everybody knows somebody who has a mental health issue or who is struggling. So it's really about eradicating that stigma that is so damaging for people's lives, that is such a barrier for people living fulfilling lives. So Time to Talk Day is our flagship campaign that we run every year, and it's about encouraging the nation to join in on that conversation, not just on Time to Talk Day, of course. We want people to do that every day of the year, but it's an opportunity for us to galvanise support around this topic, and to essentially encourage people to open up, to talk, but also to listen. I think that's really important as well. It's not just about sharing your own experiences, but also having that skill to be able to listen to somebody when they are opening up to you, because a conversation, we know, can really change somebody's life.
I totally agree. And also, I think we're seeing an explosion in the media with conversations and how they're healing people. And I know on my show, I've talked about mental health quite a lot, and I've had some mental health professionals on. So it sounds like amazing work that you guys do. And here at Radio Cardiff, we're really, really happy to support you and to support this day and to encourage our listeners to have those conversations. I just wondered what you'd found out about the stigma, and you have got some results of a survey coming out later this week, and if you could just talk about that slightly, like what you've actually found out, maybe just briefly.
Yeah, of course. So we do have some new statistics that will launch on Thursday, which is very much linked to the impact of stigma within the context of a cost of living crisis, which impacts all of us in different ways. And I have to say, looking at those statistics, they are quite stark, quite shocking, but yet not surprising. And we can see that a really high percentage of people in Wales are finding that the cost of living crisis is having a real impact on their mental health, a real negative impact, of course, in the sense that people no longer have the luxury to be able to do the things that keep them well. mentally, that lots of avenues are closing for many, many people because of financial barriers, that they're not able to access those networks of support, whether it's resources, whether it's medication in some cases, or therapy, all of the things that help us keep us well, and that'll look different to each individual. Those doors are closing for many, many people because of financial issues. We also know that a high percentage of people in Wales don't make time to talk about their mental health, and there are lots of reasons around that. Having to work longer hours, for example, not feeling that they want to be a burden because everybody's struggling, in different degrees at the moment. So it paints quite a bleak picture, I think, of what the situation is in Wales. Stigma is still very much an issue. We know that from the continuous work that we're doing and the evaluation and the insight that we do to measure, what stigma looks like across Wales. And the situation is not really getting any better. There's a real reticence as well within workplaces around people not wanting to speak to their employer about their mental health issue. Prior to the pandemic, things looked a little bit better, but it's worsened over the past few years. And people, not wanting to open up because of that fear of what might happen. Is, am I going to lose my job as a result of disclosing a mental health issue? So it really does feel that, Time to Change Wales, amongst others who are active in this space, need to do as much as possible. And, we can't do it alone. It takes a whole community, it takes a whole nation to move that conversation forward, and to make it completely unacceptable to stigmatise somebody because of a mental health issue.
I absolutely agree with you. And that's why we're having this conversation today. And I think that it can be some of those small conversations that you don't realize at the time you've had with somebody, and you've helped them, or you've had a positive impact. For example, yesterday I just bumped into somebody who is my neighbor. We talked for about 5 or 10 minutes, and we realized we had so much in common, and we said, we must get together and we must support each other, because we've both been through similar experiences and we're of a similar age. And just having that little interaction, we can now progress our relationship, go for a coffee, something simple like that. Is that what you're asking people to do when you're starting a conversation about, obviously in the street you bump into somebody, you're not going to have that conversation straight away, but say in a more intimate setting, or with a family member or a colleague? Or how do you advise people to approach? Because I know every single day people say, how are you? And you say, yes, I'm fine. And they say, yes, I'm fine. And it's like an automatic reflex. It is hard to say, actually, I'm not okay, or actually I'm having a really bad time, or actually this has happened. It is really hard because, like you said, you don't want to be a burden because everybody is having a difficult time. And I do 100% agree with you that having these conversations, it's a little bit like a pressure cooker at the moment. I think with cost of living, we've come out of COVID, we're living through a time of great change, I feel. And also we've got a lot of young people who are very disillusioned, and they've been through COVID and they're looking to the future, and it's not looking great, is it? So it's like a little bit like a pressure cooker. So how do we start those conversations to maybe alleviate the pressure and work together in our communities?
I think with the campaign, although we do promote conversations around mental health, I think the most important thing that we also do promote is making sure that the space in which people have those conversations are very safe spaces to have those conversations, because I feel as though people do open up more when they feel like the space is quite comfortable for them to do that. And I think a lot of people would just appreciate just having somebody who comes across as quite understanding, quite open, and just comes across as somebody who's not judgmental, so they feel that they're quite safe in opening up about their stresses and things like that. And I think, yeah, it is important to start a conversation, and it could be anywhere that anyone feels comfortable to have those conversations with anyone that they feel that they could trust as well. So I think that's the main thing. But again, with the cost of living crisis, a lot of the usual places that people do have these conversations are becoming quite a luxury just because of how things are at the minute in terms of the financial burdens that people have. A lot of people who, for example, one of our case studies, so somebody who has spoken about his mental health struggles in our press release, which will be coming out on Thursday, talks a little bit about how the financial the financial burden and the cost of living crisis has affected his
Take care.
has affected his well-being, because a lot of the resources that he would have had to pay for, he's actually thinking to maybe put aside for now, because he's just wondering whether he's able to pay his upcoming bills soon, just to keep his space his space safe, and to make sure he's got a roof over his head as well. So yeah, it's a very sad and stark reality that we're facing. But again, we still feel that it is important to open up, because with the added stress, you do need some sort of relief as well. So just having that conversation where you don't need to be in a place to pay for a certain space to have that conversation. It could be anywhere and with anybody that you can trust.
And it's about keeping it simple as well. I think often the fear, if somebody does disclose, whether that's in the workplace or whether that's on a more personal level, people, tend to panic and think, oh, I don't know how to fix this person. I don't know, what to do. And very often you don't need to do anything. It's about being that listening ear. And we encourage, small steps, really. So texting a friend, chatting to a colleague, because they will be experts in what they're experiencing. They'll be experts in their own mental health struggles. So you don't have to be, but it's about being that kind of that kind ear to listen, and be able to signpost if that feels like the most appropriate thing to do. So it's not about fixing people. It's not about needing to be clinical experts in mental health, but it is about just being human. We have, as part of Time to Talk Day, we've developed talking tips, cards, and lots of resources to help you start that conversation going. As part of our employers' work, there's a lot of emphasis on how managers can broach that conversation with a line manager or a direct report. So that it's not awkward, that it becomes commonplace, that it becomes part of, a national conversation about mental health. That, it shouldn't be something that people try to avoid or fear. That it's just part of asking somebody how they're doing. And, just picking up on your point there about how are you? Yeah, if we flip that and say, are you okay? I think that gives more room then for somebody to say, actually, no, I'm not okay. And asking again more than once, not just asking once and hoping that somebody will tell you how they're really feeling, but asking more than once if you think actually things are not quite right, or somebody is behaving in a way that's maybe not usual, for them. So
like if you've noticed a change in somebody's behavior, wherever you are, whether it's in your family or whether it's at work, and then just reaching out, I suppose. But I still feel, like you said, there is still stigma, and I still feel that like some people might feel uncomfortable. It's like expressing that vulnerability, especially in a work setting. Sometimes it's very difficult, isn't it? Especially if you're being like a busy person and being together, and you're okay in your job, and then say something happens, you have some kind of issue at home, or then that might change and your mental health might take a dip, and then it's like about your expectations of yourself as well. You might have an expectation, I should be this person that's busy, I should be able to cope, like that internal dialogue.
Yeah, it's a real challenge, and I think it's going to take many years for us shift, and being able to bring our whole selves to work, because we can't leave, personal stresses and home life struggles. We can't leave that at the door of the workplace. We bring those with us, whether we choose to put on a mask or whether we're a bit more open about it. We still bring all of those feelings into the workplace, and it's about acknowledging that, and acknowledging that everybody at any level within a company or an organisation will at times, have difficult times and difficult
Yeah. Do you think that employers could, especially now we're in one of the most difficult times that we've lived through, well, because it's the biggest drop in living standards in record or something like that, do you think that maybe employers should make time and space to open a conversation about how the cost of living is affecting everybody? Because it is often, like obviously we're seeing a lot of strikes all over the country, teachers strike on Wednesday, and even working people, they can't afford to pay their bills. So, maybe employers need to make space to open up that conversation and say, how are you coping with this cost of living crisis?
Absolutely. Employers have a huge role to play. When we consider in-work poverty, it's a massive issue, and that's alongside the conversation about mental health. In many ways they are inextricably linked. If somebody's worried about their financial situation, then that can cause stress and can lead to other mental health issues. So absolutely, I think employers have a real duty to be able to address this in whichever way that feels appropriate for them. And it's what a good employer needs to do, I think, is to take care of their staff. It's the biggest investment that an employer can do is ensuring that their staff are well, and that they're supported.
Yeah. And I think that also we have had a kind of culture around work where you just have to get on with it. I think it's very British to just be like, get on with it. You've got to be here at this time. And, and I think, like you say, it's going to take a long time, but I think things are changing and people are, heading towards having more of these conversations within the work setting. What do you think, Hanna?
Yeah, I really do think the attitudes are definitely changing, and I also feel like people shouldn't put too much pressure on themselves as well, professionally and personally. And I think self-stigma is still prevalent and is actually one of the hardest things to kind of break out of. And I think just knowing that, not to be too hard on yourself, and knowing that, there's a lot of people that could relate to you that may not physically show you that they are struggling, because mental health, is like an invisible thing. Not everybody knows that you're actually struggling, but once you start to open up, you'll be really surprised as to find out how many people do actually relate to what you're going through. And I guess that's also another reason why the attitudes are changing, because people are actually having that dialogue on having conversation about mental health and the stigma. And also the other important thing is the discrimination that we also fight against at Time to Change Wales as well, that people should not be discriminated on their mental health condition, whether because mental health is something, yes, it could be a silent killer, it could be invisible, but it is still a challenge for a lot of people to go through on a daily basis. And people place a lot of importance on physical health, and I really truly believe that people should have that same energy when it comes to mental health as well, and mental well-being, because it is really, really important, and it does kind of affect how you see yourself, the world, people around you, society, and how you are really.
One of the things that I often come back to on my show when I talk about mental health is the fact that just getting outside, taking a walk, also it takes care of you physically, but it also takes care of you mentally, and it doesn't cost anything. That's one of my top tips, that is a constant theme when I talk about mental health, and I was just wondering if you guys had anything to add on that, or you had any extra tips that people can do other than the conversation. Obviously, there's breathing exercises, mindfulness, all those kind of things that one can do themselves, because obviously trying to get a diagnosis or help from the health service is also very difficult as well. So I guess it's about empowering people to do those small things that can alleviate stress possibly and help them in their everyday lives. Do you have any other tips, top tips?
I think it's about being creative, and in any times, when we fall on hard times and any kind of financial difficult times, creativity does flourish, I think, because people have to find new ways of being able to, to bring joy, but also bring support to people, and how people connect with each other. And I think we saw that very significantly during lockdown, and people finding different ways of coping and different ways of being able to get what they need in order to stay well. And I'm seeing it everywhere. Initiatives and things of being able to bring people together, warm spaces, for example, in across sort of local authorities, and looking at how we can allow people to come together, have those conversations, support each other without it having to be something that's costly. I saw something on social media earlier, just before this interview, around a student mental health initiative that is looking at alternative ways of, rather than going for a coffee, go for a walk, for example, which doesn't cost anything, rather than going out for dinner, cooking at home and using the ingredients that you have at home, instead of going to the cinema, having a movie night and so on, instead of going out on a night out, having a games night. So really just sort of thinking creatively about, it's about the people that you're with and the company. It's not about spending money, and how we ride this storm, I guess.
And do you think, just while you were talking then, I was thinking, do you think that, our level of kind of conversation has been affected by social media as well? Because also, like, when everything's gone online, like work's gone online, social stuff's gone online, and obviously that was something that was amazing to have during lockdown and COVID, but now we're coming out of it. Do you feel like people have forgotten that they can look up from the screen? Do you think this has something, a part to play, like with the lack of that kind of human interaction, like you say, like those conversations?
I think they have. I think we've lost the art of conversation since lockdown, and that's a real shame, I think, and hopefully people will regain that confidence to be able to have kind of face-to-face conversations again, and use, I guess, IT platforms and social media, as a virtue, but not as the only mechanism by which we interact with people, because you don't get that the same connection, I don't think.
No, not at all.
Face.
Yeah.
It's also worth mentioning that for Time to Talk Day 2021, we did actually partner up with Britain's walking charity, Ramblers Cymru.
Oh, wow.
And it was the first sort of partnership that we've ever done with Ramblers, and it was just off by chance, really. It was just from it just stemmed from a conversation that I had from somebody that worked in Ramblers, and because they had also the connection with promoting walking and for the health benefit that it has and the pleasure that people get from it. It was just a no-brainer, really, for them to partner up with Time to Change Wales, and kind of get them on board for Time to Talk Day. And they were really excited, and as we were, to partner with them. And that proved really, really important, because it was for Time to Talk Day 2021, so that was sort of the near end of the COVID pandemic in
Yeah.
a sense. And I guess the reasons behind that was obviously late 2019 and 2020 was when everybody was pretty much on lockdown, and having that partnership with Ramblers pretty much promoted everybody to kind of step outside and kind of go out there for your health benefits, whether that's for mental health, whether that's for physical health. It kind of touches all areas really.
Yeah.
And a lot of the volunteers that were part of that from Ramblers and through Time to Change Wales really benefited from that partnership. And we, and I think nationally people felt reminded really that it is good to go outside and have that conversation. You don't necessarily need to always pick up the phone or text somebody. You can make a socially distanced, it's really strange not even saying socially distanced anymore, because that was part of the vocabulary back then. That socially distanced walk or conversation that we were just promoting people to do, and that really did have an effect on people positively as well. So yeah, it's worth mentioning that.
Yeah, and they say, like, they used to have something back in Mid Wales, and this lady had said, and I think it was called like a walk and a talk.
Yeah,
That's
walk
quite
and a
good.
talk.
A
Yeah.
walk and a talk. Yeah, that is brilliant. So, what can people do to support you then? They go on your website and they've got resources there, and they can also take these tips that we've talked about today. Is there anything else you want to say or add that the listeners could do?
So with our resources, I think it's also worth mentioning that you don't necessarily have to be in a very, very bad place to talk about mental health, because a lot of our resources are quite creative. Like with this Time to Talk Day this year, we have very interactive resources like the interactive bingo cards, and we've got conversation starters. So things that I feel like you can have a conversation about mental health, but you don't necessarily have to feel like you're going through something dire to have a conversation about it. Because I know the other stigma behind mental health is I can't possibly talk about mental health if I'm not going through specific conditions or specific scenarios that are quite hard hitting. At the end of the day, everybody does have mental health, and as some people who might think what they're going through is it's pretty minor compared to somebody else, but every problem that they're facing is a problem and is worth exploring and is worth talking about. So
Yeah.
it's about finding ways to have a conversation about mental health, but not in a very serious way, because I understand that not everybody feels that way. And at Time to Change Wales, we try and kind of adapt this person-centered approach that not every kind of conversation fits each person in that sense. So it's worth mentioning that our resources are quite adaptable for any type of conversation.
Fantastic, because I think everybody's individual and they're all on a scale. I think it's good not to compare yourself as well, and like you said, not trivialize if you are feeling something, to kind of accept that and just be able to say and not feel like, oh, it's silly, it's not as bad as all that, because we have got this, like I said, we've got that ingrained, we must carry on. And I think it's very ingrained. I mean, it is in me. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I think also left over from like COVID and lockdown, because it was a difficult time for everybody. You just kind of you just plowed on through, But it has been amazing talking to you guys, and what an amazing campaign. And at Radio Cardiff, we're so happy to support you. Anyone can go to your website and get those resources and then start those conversations. So thank you. Yeah. Oh, is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly add that so a lot of our resources are bilingual. So if anybody who is a fluent Welsh speaker is able to also access the Welsh side of our website, and obviously the website being www.timetochangewales.org.uk. If you are looking to visit the Welsh site, then you could either put forward dash and then you put CY, which will enable you to go onto the Cymraeg site as well. And yeah, Time to Talk Day is on Thursday, the 2nd of February, this Thursday coming up, and we are looking to have that conversation with everybody around Wales about mental health. And we're also on social media, so on Twitter, you can always catch us on TTC Wales, and we also have the Welsh one, which is, Lowri, you might want to remind me on the Welsh one.
AINC Cymru.
Yeah.
Or
And then on
AI.
Instagram, we're also Time to Change Wales as well. So if anyone is having any sort of events, whether you're an employer, whether you're an individual, would be really, really keen to see everybody's events and conversations, and to join the conversation by hashtag Time to Talk Day or hashtag Amseri Syriad as well.
Fabulous. Yeah, I was just going to say that hashtag Time to Talk Day. So thank you guys. That's been amazing.